Wednesday, CCMP family. Pastor Jason here with you this Wednesday. I'm just thankful that you're here. We're pressing in. It is literally the last day of May. It's kind of hard to think about that May is already done, and we're pressing in. We're pressing into summertime. We're pressing into pool parties. We're pressing into time. Hopefully you and your family get some time to get away to the coast, to the mountains. Maybe that can't be where you go. Maybe just going to the pool and getting some R&R that way is what you need. But whatever you need, hopefully this summer can be a time of just restoration and a little bit of recoup. And all of that said, with all the kids graduating and everything, it is a busy, busy time. But we never take our eyes off of Him. We never take our eyes off of Him. And I just continue to think back to Pastor Snow's message this past Sunday as we're really ramping up for our honoring our graduates this coming Sunday. But he challenged us with Fire in the Hole about the Young Champion series that he just finished. And it reminds us of the audacious faith that these young people have, this boldness that God for some reason allows young people to have. But yet they were focused on Christ, so their faith was not in vain. And so often I believe that we have so many things that really burden us or bother us that keep us from experiencing the fullness that God has for us. And that's really where I want to go today with the message. And we're going to be in Matthew chapter 1, but really housekeeping-wise, the only two things we really want to make sure that you have on your radar, and there's more than this coming up in June, and you'll hear more about those as we press on into June, but two really important things because they're really important. First one is this Sunday, June 4th, is our Graduate Sunday. We're so excited. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 43 graduates this year at CCMP. That's between high school and college graduates, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing opportunity for us to honor their achievements, for us to really see the growth. This is really a legacy thing compared to some of the graduations that we've celebrated in years past. And we're beginning to see some legacies as well, where we had some high school graduates, and now we're honoring their college graduation. And so all this is all coming together in God's perfect timing, and it's beautiful to see these young people growing up in CCMP as we see the church CCMP growing up as well. So don't miss Sunday, either 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You're going to want to be here and see and honor the graduates from this church from here in Mount Pleasant, North Carolina. It's going to be amazing. And then on June 11th, we have our next baptism. And most of you know, we do baptisms at a pool. It's a real community. Honestly, it's a party where we get together and we celebrate. And I love that about baptisms. It's a public profession of faith. It's a public coming out party for Christ. And that's what we want to do. And so we're up to 18 on our baptism list. So the list is getting filled up. There's still room for you if you know that this is your next step. If you need to publicly profess your faith in Jesus Christ and say, I'm a follower of Christ. It's only one of the two New Testament ordinances that we are commanded to do. And with the other being communion as well. So if that is what you know you need to do, it is June 11th. It is at 6 p.m. and it will be at the home of Ryan Heron, which is all. You can find details on the address and everything on our website. But anywho, check that out. If you need to get signed up on the list, you got to touch base with me, Janet, Pastor Snow, or you can check out our website on our next steps and click baptism. You can follow it that direction. But without further ado, let's jump into this because I really want to hit what are some of the things that can keep you from keeping your eyes on Christ. And I'm going to go to a passage of Scripture that you're going to think is odd. And it's really one of the ways that the Gospel author, specifically Matthew, felt like he needed to begin his Gospel account of Jesus Christ. So Matthew is telling and writing about the beginning, the Gospel of Jesus. And he's writing and he's having to tell, this is what, if I need to tell the world about who Jesus is and was, then I'm going to start my Gospel this way. And he started off with a genealogy. And so I don't get lost in all the names. But I'm going to read through this. And I'm going to get excited along the way. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to make some good points. Because I believe in this genealogy, there's some amazing places, there's some amazing points that God is trying to make through Matthew as he's writing down this Gospel. So let's go. Matthew chapter 1. We're reading out of the English Standard Version. We're going to start in verse 1. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then he begins in verse 2. And really what he's trying to say there, the book of the genealogy, really when he's saying the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, he's really making the claim that Jesus is the Word. And by word, he's using the word logos, which logos means that it is the living expression. Jesus is the expression of the invisible God. Jesus lived out and was the express. And Matthew specifically is trying to write to the Jewish audience. So he's trying to say Jesus of Nazareth is the long-awaited Messiah for the Jewish people. And so he says, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. This is the living expression of the Messiah. Do you believe? And so he's trying to show that based off of this genealogy. And so he starts at Abraham. Abraham, verse 2, Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, who would make the 12 tribes of Israel. And Judah the father of Perez, and Zerah by Tamar. It's interesting. We're going to see some ladies that pop up in this genealogy of Jesus. And I'll stop when we get to some of them. And Perez, the father of Hezron, and Hezron, the father of Ram, and Ram, the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab, the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon, the father of Salmon, and Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab. Those of you who remember Rahab, as Rahab was the one who helped out Joshua when they were coming and spying out the land and spying out Jericho, and she was the prostitute who helped him out. It's interesting as you have a prostitute included in the genealogy of Jesus. Both Boaz by Rahab and Boaz, the father of Obed, by Ruth. And we see Ruth. Ruth was not a Jew. Ruth was a Moabite. She was the one who lost her husband and then came back to Israel, and then she ends up finding Boaz, and Boaz was her kinsman redeemer, much like Jesus is our redeemer. The father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David, the king. And so just there, you have all these generations just there, and I'm going to keep on going. But already we see Tamar, and we see Rahab, and we see Ruth, and we see these situations. And Ruth, if you're not familiar, I encourage you to go back. It's a quick, small Old Testament book. Read through the Old Testament book of Ruth this week. But we see a situation. Ruth would be a situation of a widow who ends up going, and now she finds another one who redeems her and redeems her. And Boaz is the one who makes her path straight, and God works her way out in an unfortunate situation, or a less than fortunate situation. And then we have Rahab, and both of them are Gentiles. But yet Jesus said Jesus' genealogy is not perfect. Jesus' genealogy probably isn't even ideal. But what I love about Jesus' genealogy is that even in spite of all the things that have happened in his past, God still made a way through that imperfect past. And I don't know what that imperfect past is for you, but what I will tell you is that God is not done with you if you will stop and follow him now. And he will take that genealogy. He will take that broken past. He will take that misunderstood. He will take that unfortunate past. He will take that past where you've made mistakes. And I don't know why Rahab was a prostitute, but she was a prostitute. And he will take that past and he will turn it into something beautiful and good if only you will say, I will follow you. I believe and put my faith in you, King Jesus, and I will follow you. So let's see what he does here. And David, we're in verse 6. And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah. That's another way of saying Bathsheba. And Solomon, the father of Rehoboam. And Rehoboam, the father of Abijah. And Abijah, the father of Asaph. And Asaph, the father of Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat, the father of Joram. And Joram, the father of Uzziah. And Uzziah, the father of Jotham. And Jotham, the father of Ahaz. And Ahaz, the father of Hezekiah. And Hezekiah, the father of Manasseh. and Manasseh the father of Amos, and Amos the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jeconiah, and his brothers at the time of the deportation of Babylon. And again, we see here this section of the genealogy, 14 names of 14 men and 14 families. And we see that Bathsheba, David beginning and sparking this generation. And the generation that was started off, and again, not a perfect past, imperfect. And it does not that God condones imperfection, but God says, even if. Pastor Snow said, do you have the but even though faith, or but if faith? If it doesn't work out, do you still, even in spite of your mistakes, can you get up and follow Christ now? Don't let that be the definition of who you are. Let Christ define who you are. In verse 12, and after the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Shealtiel, and Shealtiel the father of Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel the father of Abiad, and Abiad the father of Eliakim, and Eliakim the father of Azor, and Azor the father of Zadok, and Zadok the father of Achim, and Achim the father of Eliad, and Eliad the father of Eleazar, and Eleazar the father of Mattan, and Mattan the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called Christ. And notice here, Joseph is not necessarily the father of Jesus, but he is the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born. And you take on and kingship is passed down through the lineage of the Father. And so Matthew is saying that Jesus is the rightful heir to the throne of David, and he is the Messiah, and he is the fulfillment of the fact that the king will come, the Messiah will come from the lineage of David. But Joseph was not his biological father. Verse 17, so all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations. And from David to the deportation of Babylon, 14 generations. And from the deportation of Babylon to the Christ, 14 generations. All of these, and all those equal, honestly, 42 generations. But it's interesting if you count all the generations, it would really be 41. But what I love is the fact that Jesus would give birth through his life, through his life and through his spirit, through his spilling of his blood and water when he was stabbed on the cross, through his death, he would give birth through the 42nd generation, which would be the church, which would be the coming of the church, which would be you and me. The completion of this generation and this genealogy is you. It is me. It is the church. It is not just CCMP, but it is the global church which CCMP and those who are here have a privilege of being a part of. This genealogy tells me just a few things. One, we've discussed. One, your past can't be a determining factor of what is to come. Yes, your situation may have led you to where you are now, but if you would begin to hand your situation over to Christ, he will begin to work all things out for the good of those who are called according to your purposes. You are never too far gone. Your past can never lead you to a place where you are too far from being saved or too far from pursuing goodness with Christ. From saying, Jesus, I need you to take charge of my life. Will you come to Christ? It tells me that. It also tells me that God is always up to something in the midst of your life. God is always up to something in the midst of your life. What it also tells me is that God is a God of promise and fulfillment. Jesus couldn't come from Joseph just because Jesus was without sin. Jesus had to be the Son of God because God had to intervene into our situation. So he was the son of Mary, who was the husband of Joseph. And that is who is called Christ. God is working through your situation, and God is a God of promises. Don't think that you're not a part of this genealogy. As we're about to celebrate our graduates, don't forget the fact that These graduates are just a part of a legacy. You are a part of a legacy. We are at this church are a part of a legacy. If you think about the person who shared Christ with you first, and that is the person who God used to draw you to himself, then think about who that person shared, who shared Christ with that person. For me, it was my grandma. Who shared Christ with my grandmother first? And then who shared Christ with the person who shared with my grandmother first? And if you trace that genealogy back, the beauty of it is it would ultimately get back to Peter and maybe one of the apostles and who they taught. And then ultimately we get back to Christ himself. And then you look at the genealogy, and we are a part of that living genealogy that comes from Christ. You are not a mistake. You are worthy of love. You are a child of the Most High God. It's time that we own our genealogy. It's time we own our identity, and it's time we move on and not let the past be our identity, but let our hopeful future in Christ, doesn't sit beside hope, our hopeful future in Christ be what is our identity moving forward. So hold on to that. Take advantage. Read the book of Ruth. Follow up on our passages. We're going to be in John chapter 3. Read John 1, 2, 3 in preparation for where we're going for Graduate Sunday this week. And I guarantee you, God will reveal another piece of who you are and who he is in you this week. I love y'all. Have an amazing rest of your week.